So in today's video we're going to be swapping the brakes, rotors, and wheel studs on the front of this 98 Mustang with the V6. It also has a manual transmission. And we're also going to be swapping the brakes, the rotors, and the calipers on the back as well as the wheel studs. So this is my first drift car build. It's not in too bad a shape. I wish I would have started the video before I swapped the radiator, but there's the old radiator. Got an aluminum racing radiator put in there. It's a 2-core. Got the expansion tank and relocated the cap so it's a little bit higher. And through these videos that I'm going to be posting over the next month or so, we're going to be documenting the progress on my drift build as we're going into the new drift season starting in March. I know a lot of the events don't start picking up until April, but there are a couple of places that are going to be doing events in March, such as Cam's Acres, and I believe there's a event as well over in Ozark Speedway. This is my first drift car that I'm building, and over the course of the next month or so, I will be uploading videos of the progress as we swap various parts. And we need to swap that air filter and the air intake system because it should be exiting out of this fender here, but it's not. It's just kind of flopping around in here. So that's not good. Not really going to fly with the tracks when I go to do inspection. Got to swap out this suspension on the front and the back as well. We got one of the seats in as well. Gonna swap the passenger at some point, but I don't have a passenger, so it's not as important. And I will be doing most of this work by myself in a garage with very limited space. As you can see, I can't really get into the vehicle on the driver's side. I had to crawl out of the passenger. There's not really much space to work on the back side there, but we're gonna make it work because it is 20 degrees outside. And there's no way I am working outside in the snow in 20 degrees. I don't know if that's even possible. Well, we could probably make it work if I needed to. But we have the garage for now until it starts to warm up a little bit. And hopefully we can get this build finished by April when the season starts. There is one event that starts in March as well over at Cam's Acres, but most of the events aren't going to be starting until April. Now, these videos aren't really going to be a how-to guide. I can provide people with details if they do want the build list and have any questions about how I built anything. I'm always welcome to people asking questions, and either in the comment section or you can send me a message privately. I'm not sure if that's an option on YouTube. But anyways, anybody that has any kind of questions about the build, on how I did certain things, if it's not in the videos, or if you have any questions about the build list, I can give you the details. As of right now, I'm not too worried about posting it on the page, but I will get to that eventually. Now, I can detail some of the things that you're going to need, such as most likely some PB blaster and a breaker bar. I was not able to get these off with an impact, so that was my route. And with the PB blaster and a little bit of elbow grease in your breaker bar, I was able to get them off in about 30 seconds. So those are already broke loose. I just need to take those off so that way we can get to the rotor and start swapping that out, as well as the studs. We're going to be running some spacers on the front, so I did get the extended ARP studs for the back, and I had to get the Moroso studs for the front just because I wasn't able to find anywhere that had the ARP studs where they would be here in time. So I figured if the Morosos ever break, I'll just replace them with the ARPs later on. They were triple the price, so I saved a little bit of money there. It just depends on what route you want to go. I'm usually a one and done kind of guy, so it's a little different for me to purchase the Morosos over the ARPs, but we're just running a little bit tight on funding for the build just due to unforeseen costs as usual. It's kind of how a build usually goes unless you already have a shop with all the tools and have everything you need. But usually there's something that you need that you're not really expecting, so that's just part of building a car. And as you see, I got my ARP studs over here, and those are going to be for the back side. I got my breaker bar ready to go, and we will get back to you with some of the parts. Alright guys, I got my box full of parts here. We got our Moroso wheel studs for the front. Got our wheel stud installer. We've got some lug nuts, open-ended extended lug nuts. We've got some brand new Power Stop Evolution brake pads and hardware, always. Alright, what do we got here? Oh, we got the wheel spacers right here, so that way we can clear our steering rack after we get the angle kit on there. Don't have an angle kit just quite yet, but that's going to be coming here pretty soon. And then we got our rotors. Super exciting, don't think I need to show you those. But we will pull those out here in a second when we go to install them, and we'll get back to you. I almost forgot. We also got BC Racing coilovers. We got the full setup. It's the BR series, nothing crazy, but we are going to be swapping the suspension because this is stock suspension in this Mustang is shot. It is so bouncy. So we need to get something a little stiffer so that way when we go to initiate drifts, it won't have a bunch of body roll and cause us to spin out and all this other sorts of fun stuff. Alright, I'm going to get to pulling some tires off and then I'll get back with you guys. Alright, so we got the wheels off. They were a little stuck, so I had to bang on them a little bit with this sledgehammer. After some PB blaster and a sledgehammer, they came right off. So now we need to remove the brake caliper, so I'm going to get my T50 here, which I already got, and we're going to loosen this bolt down here at the bottom of the brake caliper, so that way I can get this part off and get my brakes changed, as well as get the whole bracket for the caliper off, so that way we can remove our rotor, and then we'll replace the rotor, and we can also disconnect this suspension component here, and we can install the coilovers. So I'm gonna be swapping a lot of stuff here. I'm gonna get these wheel studs out too once we get everything off, and we'll get to working. So we got our wheels off. They were a little stuck, so I had to use some PB blaster and a mallet so that way I could get them off, but we got it off. And so I'm going to be removing this bolt using a T50 Torx head, so that way we can remove this part of the caliper, the actual caliper, and then there's two bolts as well down there that we are going to have to get to for the caliper bracket. They're going to be down there somewhere. We are also going to be installing brand new wheel studs as well as brand new rotors, and we're also going to be installing brand new coilovers because all of this shit is rusty. All these parts are extremely rusty and caked with God knows what. Alright guys, so once you take off the caliper with the T50 Torx bit and you remove the caliper bolt, then you're going to remove these two bolts in the caliper bracket right here, and the caliper bracket holes, and the bolts are going to be right back there. It's a 15 millimeter, so I used a 15 millimeter short socket, and once you remove that, the rotor just pulls right off. If it doesn't, you can just give it a little taps with a sledgehammer, or preferably a rubber mallet, but that'll get the job done if you need to. And the wheel studs just knock right out. Alright, the next part is going to be removing the suspension components, or the shock, and then the spring, and then the divorced shock right here, strut. The next part is going to be removing the strut and the spring, so that way I can replace it with the coilover. So now that we got the rotor and the wheel studs removed, the next part is going to be removing the shock and the spring. The next part is going to be removing the shock and the spring. And just make sure that you take off when you take off the brake caliper, you tie it to something with, I have it tied with paracord, but you can use a bungee, wire hanger, anything that you need. As long as it's tied up, so that way there's no tension on this line here. You don't want your brake line having tension and then busting, and then you have to go and buy another part. So once we remove these two bolts right here, there's also some bolts up here for the caster camber plate, and we'll remove all of those and get our coilovers put in. Alright, let's get to it. Well, I thought I had pressed record, but I guess I didn't, so we are recording now. We got the two bolts in for the lower part of the coilover, and then we got the 3 bolts in the top. Fairly easy, it's just 5 bolts. I was actually able to get these off by hand, and the ones down here I did have to use the breaker bar on, but it was pretty easy to get them off, and then everything should just slide right back together pretty easy, much easier than when it went on. And what you are going to want to do is just make sure that your threads here are clean. I did wipe them off before I slid them in, but the knuckle here is pretty dirty, so they got some stuff on them. You don't have to, but it does help with keeping your threads nice, not having them messed up. I don't particularly feel like having to redo these anytime soon. So I'm just going to get them on there as hand tight as I can, and then I'll switch over to the impact and my wrench. And then once I get them on all the way with the impact, I'm going to make sure they're torqued down properly, and then we will get those in all the way. It is a little easier if you hold everything up with a jack stand, so I'm using a jack stand pressed against the lower control arm here, so I can lift everything up and I don't have to hold it. I'm doing this by myself, so anything we can do to make it easier. So now that that's in, I'm going to lift this up as much as I can before we start lifting the car off of the ground. Grab my tip here. We're going to come up to the top, and I'm just going to tighten up these bolts up here. You just want to make sure you tighten these bolts up as much as you can. I'm not trying to break the bolts off or anything, but I am tightening down pretty tight. Now, I'm going to get my sway bar bushing and bolt back in, which I forgot to mention. You can pull the spring out by compressing the spring, but it's 10 times easier if you just remove the sway bar end link right here, and then drop the whole thing down. You can just pull it out by hand. Alright, well, that sucks. Well, I didn't line up the sway bar link properly when I jacked this up and installed these, so we're just going to remove these real quick, check it down, make sure that we align it properly as we jack it up. There we go. Alright, take two. Should be pretty easy. Getting over being sick with all this snow. Alright. Looks like everything's lined up pretty good. Just go ahead and make sure. again. Make sure that you have the rounded side down. Pay attention when you take it apart. That also helps. I'm going to clean these threads off because they're disgusting and making it a little harder to thread everything back in there. Alright. Yeah, that helped a lot. Almost get it over my head. You also don't really need to worry about torquing these bolts, just get them down as tight as you can. Not even as tight as you can, just make sure they're very tight. Ready to drop everything back down. Look at that. Nice and solid. Should be good. This impact's only rated for about 200 pounds, so these are only supposed to be about 150. It should be fine. We are going to be dripping, so put them just a little extra tight just in case. And I will check them after about first 50 miles, and then again after the first couple hundred, 1,000. I do one extra check. Let's go ahead and get to these wheel studs. I only have about 2 feet of space between the car and the wall. So I'm working in very limited space. Don't have all the tools I need, but we're going to make it work. So I have to do this for every single one. Just going to get these in there. It was a little unconventional, but there is a hole in the knuckle there, and it holds it in place pretty good. So, I was using my impact yesterday to put the driver's side on, but I found it just moves a little slower than I'd like. I need a stronger one. That'll come later. Like I said, we're making it work. You just want to make sure that once you get to the end, you don't keep torquing them down. This is fairly easy. This is a 24-inch breaker bar, so it takes a little bit of muscle, but not much. And once it gets to the point where it's pretty difficult, you should probably stop. Or else you will strip your lug nut out, strip your wheel stud. You actually might snap them off. We're pulling in the last little bit now, so I do like to double check and make sure I'm not pulling it too far. And right about here. Can't pull it in anymore, so we're gonna leave it. Back that off. Now, should be able to remove this by hand. There is probably going to be some metal shavings in there, so I'm just going to use the impact. This has a little plastic protector on the inside. It sometimes gets stuck in the knurls that pop through, so I don't stick it all the way down there, but I stick this flathead screwdriver about 3/4 of the way down. You can just pop that right out. And we're on to the next one. It's not a necessity, but I usually push the wheel stud in as I'm twisting this down, make sure that my wheel stud installer is flush. Just so that way it's about as tight as I can get it by hand before I even start with the breaker bar. Now you can use an impact, but I've personally found that it strips more of the metal off, and like I said, it takes a little longer, so I can... Okay, we'll try it. Looks like we're at the end now. Well, that did work a little easier than the other side. But whatever method you prefer, whatever you got, just use what you can. We'll just make sure this one's pulled all the way through. And there we go. I'm gonna throw the wheel back on. And we're done. Alright guys, this is Green Line Racing. Have a good night.